Good morning, podcast listeners. This is Ed Franklin with the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. This is Raising 10, episode 11. And thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you listening. My numbers are still up, and I really appreciate you viewing those clips on Facebook. You can always go to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and I have shorts on there that you can listen to as well. So keep doing that. I really appreciate it. Things are growing, things are getting bigger. A lot of stuff's going on right now that I'll talk more about later. But today, before I get started, I wanted to tell you I got invited to this event this morning, and it was kind of a dad's club, kind of people speaking about fatherhood and that, and it was at Cathedral Catholic High School, and the speaker, I won't mention his name just because he might not want me to, is a major league baseball manager and played in the majors for like 17 years. He was a Padre at one point, and I saw some other friends of mine that I knew there that were Padres in the past. So it was kind of fun. And what he was talking about was faith and fatherhood. Now, I never get into religion here because it's just not my business. And you pretty much know how I feel about religion, and that's a positive thing. And but not everybody does, and I don't ever want to exclude anybody and say this is the path you have to take because morality is subjective and how you raise your kids is subjective and what you learned and what your background was. But it was interesting. He had his son get up and talk for a minute because of his baseball schedule when he was a kid. It was a little tougher for him and his dad to have the relationship they might have wanted to. But I felt like, at this point they've handled it. And I mentioned to one of the guys there, I said, wow, there's a lot of athletes in here. Most of them retired or whatever. And I'm not sure that people can relate to them as much as regular. And he says, well, they're just regular guys. I said, well, that's true, but they also have some pretty inflated salaries that our normal people don't have. And a lot of you out there grinding with kids, maybe you're working two jobs or you got a side hustle or you and your wife are both working. We don't have that luxury. And this is not an insult to them. It's just congratulations on their success. But I think the normal down the road stuff is what I was going through when I was raising kids, and that was running out of money and having to get daycare, secure daycare, and do all these things. So it was kind of cool, and I might talk a little bit more about that in the future. But it made me feel like I really want to get up and speak in front of people, especially dads, and kind of you know talk them through and let them know how valuable they are and how much impact they have on their children. Whether they think they're there all the time, maybe they're at work a lot, they still have a huge impact. And kind of what we're going to talk about today is culture. And I know a lot of times when I do these podcasts, they're not very exciting. It'd be much better to me tell you stories about the police coming to our house and this kid doing that and that kid doing that. But these are the kind of the foundational things that we don't really do intentionally a lot of times, but it affects our entire life. It affects our work life, our relationships. It affects everything we do. And the other thing I wanted to touch on is there's a lot of single dads out there and single moms that are doing their best to get by. And, maybe things didn't work out between them, but they still have these children to rear. And if I said it once, I've said it a million times that your relationship if you're in a situation where you're not together with your spouse or, you know, the other parent, it's really vital for you to have a good relationship. It's going to make your whole life easier. It's going to make your kids' life easier and all that. So we're going to talk about culture today and what kind of culture you developed, or if you have kids now, what kind of culture you can develop while you're raising your kids. And a lot of that culture is just driven by the economy, and it's driven by a lot of different things. If you're making tons of money, maybe the culture that you're implementing in your household is different from somebody that's struggling a little bit. So when you think of the word culture, the first thing you think of is like society, right? You think of Mexican culture and African American culture, or I'm closely related to the Albanian culture, and they have these very not strict but very good family values, and they spend a lot of time together as families. They don't seem, I'm a mutt, so I'm really not attached to any nationality or anything. So when I was growing up, I grew up around these families that had really good family values and they were together a lot. And were separated from most of my family because they were on the East Coast or in the Northwest. So we didn't have those family get-togethers. We had some at a small level, but not like these. Like when my daughters had her first child, the Albanian culture showed up like, I don't know, there must have been 200 people at this baby shower. We had it at Poway Lake, and they're just very friendly. And then being involved in that, I've met a lot of Albanians that know me that I don't necessarily know them because of my involvement with that Albanian culture. So then, about maybe for the last 20 years, we've heard a lot about culture in companies, right? What's the culture like in your company? And this kind of was derived by different books that were written and things like that. And HR people were starting to look at the culture of a company and seeing how people are getting along and if messages are getting from the top to the bottom and kind of, is it a good place to work? Is it a bad place to work? Are they doing things that are, you know, good for their employee centric, or are they just about making the almighty dollar, $7? I got dollars on my mind. Um, and you'll get you can go on LinkedIn and find thousands of experts on culture, and none of it's the same. I mean, some of it's repetitive, but they'll all talk about what you have to do to make a better culture here and a better culture there. But the reality is, it's like anything, it's the 80-20 rule, right? About 80% of the companies or 100% of the companies talking about it, only about 20% are doing anything that really affects change or increases profit or does any of those things. But when you're raising your family, you're creating a culture you probably don't even know what you're doing when you're starting to do it. Is it a culture of scarcity? Is it a culture that you just don't have the funds to get things that you want to get your kids? Are you, spending time with other family members outside of your own close family? Do you have relatives in town? Are you putting together this family culture where people want to be around you or your kids want to be around? Or are you creating a culture that's, full of violence and full of anger and full of arguing and things like that? And the point to all this was, is it making you a better person and in your workplace if you're creating a better culture in your home? I would say 100%. A lot of times I'll meet people that have kids, just a couple, or, one, two, three, four, maybe five kids, and they'll bring them to an event, say a picnic or something, and you can see if the parents and the family are close, right? You can go to the beach and you can kind of watch how families operate. Is it just this, dictatorship where the father or the mother is just yelling at the kids all the time? Or is it this really fun relationship where they're having a good time and they like spending time with each other? The kids are playing. I know at church, we a lot of times see families with big families with kids come into the church, and on Sunday when we were at church, there was this little boy in front of us. I think they had four kids. I think they had two girls and two boys. And this little boy was just a boy. I mean, he was jumping up and down and, hitting his brother and doing all these things. But you know what? By the end of Mass, he was hugging his mom and he was hugging his brother. And it was this cute little kind of, nice little thing we were watching. So I would imagine in that case, they're creating this nice little culture of those six people, parents and four kids, and there's a culture. It's a fun culture to watch. And as those people hang out with other children and other families, they may, gather in the same kind of fun culture. I know I keep saying the word culture and it's going to get old by the time I'm done here. I know that. Um, but these things you're forming at home, right? These behaviors you're forming at home and your communication you're forming at home. Your kids and you are going to take this out into the workforce, out into society, and it's going to be a big impact on how you treat other people and how they treat other people. It's not just about sitting them down for 2 seconds or 10 seconds or 2 minutes and telling them how to behave. It's this constant expectation of good behavior from your kids. And it's not always going to be that way. There's going to be times where they lash out, and that's why they're kids, right? They're learning, they're trying to figure you out, you're trying to figure them out. And this when you have a family that has these strong leaders in it, mom and dad that are strong leaders, and they're taking that into the workforce, a lot of times I would find that managers that I had that were good, they were decent managers, were also good parents, right? So they kind of had this structure of leadership that they followed through. And by the same token, I knew some people that I worked with that when they would get together at a family picnic or a company picnic or a holiday party or something like that, and the kids were just out of control. And you could relate that to their work, how disorganized they were at work, or how they acted at work, or how they acted out at work. And it was pretty interesting. Once I had my first child, I changed. I mean, it was going to be a whole different situation for me. I spent a lot of time with my kids. We spent a lot of time doing things together, not just me taking them and dropping them off at, this one of these air places or at a birthday party. We would stay engaged in that birthday party or that thing and watch them and encourage them and do all those things and make sure that they were behaving like they should. We took 8 kids to church forever and we never really had anybody ever act out. I think one time I had to take somebody out of church, and it was probably because they didn't feel well. It wasn't because they were having a behavioral issue. They probably just didn't feel well. And listen, there's many times I wanted to walk out of church too because I didn't feel well or not go, but we still were very disciplined about that going, and it was that culture. And I was explaining to one of my guests in the past about how we used to go to church and the kids never complained, and he says, "Well, what they're really doing, they're watching you. If you go and you're not complaining and you're just going to do it and knowing you need to get it done." And I hate to say that so lightly, like it's not important, but the kids are just going to follow along. The kids understood it was important to us, and there was some value to them about being at church too. The reason I keep looking off to my left here is because I'm looking at something I wrote down. But I'm challenging parents really and leaders to rethink their daily choices to shape their family culture. Um, when you come home from work, when it's just one of those days it just didn't go well, that's not your kid's fault. And your kids should be that light, right? When you get home, they should brighten up your day. Now, I know there's those days when I came home and I didn't have a good day, and then I found out my kids did something wrong or were not acting the way I'd like them to act. And that's okay too, but I had to control my feelings and not lash out at them about whatever. I'm still raising a child here, my grandchild, and she at times is a little bit irresponsible with like turning in projects and things like that. And it was so cute this weekend. She went and printed out all her grades, and they were fabulous grades, just off the hook good. But she had forgotten to turn in an assignment, which would have made one of the grades even better. But I wanted to make sure I didn't add that caveat in every time, like, well, you got good grades, but I didn't want to do that because she was very proud of her grades and she's really working hard, and her grades are way up from where they were at before. So she's definitely putting in the time. So she does have some brain fog sometimes and forgets to turn things in. And she has some extracurricular things that are going on that we've kind of said, look, you can only do, if you don't do good at this one, you can't do this one too. So that's resonating with her, and she's really working hard on her grades. You gotta, I talked about this before, where if you're a leader at work and you started to treat your employees like you did your kids, not in a childish way, but in a positive way where you were encouraging them to do better and you were giving them the tools to do better, you understand that that's going to help your culture at work. And this is what you're learning at home. You're learning to take this into a leadership position at work. You may not be the boss, you may not be the person that has any direct reports or anybody that's you're having to be in charge of, but your attitude says a lot. When I was embedded at this large retailer, I could see different people's attitudes towards the work, even though it wasn't glamorous work. It was very difficult, hard work physically. You could see how embedded they were as far as interest and if they were just going to do their job. Listen, there were days my body was hurting so bad when I was doing some of this stuff. I felt like I couldn't go on. But you got to kind of embrace the suck. I've done a podcast about that before, where you just got to say, you know what, it's only 8 hours. I'm going to push through. And after each hour went by, I'd say it's only 7, only 6, only 4. and it would keep me engaged in doing that job. And before you knew it, I was on my way home. So when I got through that, but what I really noticed was really a lack of leadership at that lower level, where they just were not doing, they weren't giving them any structure or guidance or any accolades or nothing. I mean, it was just go do your job and, kind of shut up. And you could see that manifesting with the employees where they were not super interested in doing the job. And they weren't doing it at a high level. And this is a company that counts on members' value and perception. And if that's a section of the company that's not really doing their work, it's going to affect the value to the member. So if you apply that to your child, when your kids were children, we had some routines that we did. When the kids come home from work, they got a snack and they did their homework. Saturday mornings, we cleaned the house for about an hour. We had a chore board up where everybody's chores would rotate so they could do different things and they wouldn't get bored. The value to them doing their job is that we got to play, right? We got to go surfing or riding bikes or camping or all these other things. It kind of sounds like you're conning them a little bit, but that wasn't the point. The point was that they had responsibilities they took care of first, and then they had an opportunity to have a good time and have some fun and have some latitude and not be under the thumb of anybody, where they could be creative and they could do their own things. They could draw a color, they could sing, they could play music, they could do all those other things. So it was I thought we did built a really good culture in our household, and it was very similar to the culture I was building at work. I was very encouraging to people. I would train them, I would help them out. I wouldn't I would understand if they had some needs outside of work that they needed to take care of, and we just let them go do those things. And what in turn, when I needed something, they were stepping up, right? They were volunteering for things. They were doing the job, and we had to push a little harder. They were pushing a little harder. So this cultural thing is super important in the whole scheme of things when you're talking about whether it's a family or it's a job. And when you start to lead at home like that, it's going to transfer and manifest itself into your work life. It's going to manifest itself into your relationships. It's going to do all those things. And it's super important. I talked about doing micro podcasts, which are only about 4 to 6 minutes long, and I may try some of those. The nice thing about that is sometimes I know that you might listen to my clips, but you won't listen to the whole podcast because it's 30 minutes out of your day. And some of us just don't have 30 minutes to sit down and listen to a podcast. And I understand it. I get it. But I want you to understand too, if you're a grandparent that's listening to this and what my demographics tell me, there's a lot of grandparents listening to this podcast, older people my age, a little bit younger than me, and they may be listening to impart some wisdom on their kids for their grandkids, and I think that's awesome. And it's also kind of a gauge for them to look at their kids and their grandkids and see if they're doing the right things. Now I know it's not for me to tell them that, but it's kind of nice to be reinforced. And I see a lot of families on Facebook, not the fake families. I know these people, and they're having a good time with their kids. They're spending time with them. They're celebrating birthdays. They're celebrating, their graduations and things like that. And I think that's great. That's one of the reasons I like Facebook. So, like I said, when you're creating this culture, and there's a ripple effect for your kids to their friends too. And we oftentimes had several friends of my kids over at the house because it was a low key kind of, we weren't yelling at anybody. We were all kind of relaxing. We had a pool. We could have fun in the pool in the summer. And I think the kids felt like they weren't getting that same culture at home. That's no insult to my friends' families or anything like that. They might have had parents that worked different hours than me or whatever. And we were on a pretty, regular regimen, Monday through Friday, had the weekends off. So I can't tell you enough how important how you're acting and how your kids are viewing you, how important it is, because it's super important. And they talked a little bit about that today, about talking about faith and the work ethic that you have to put in as a professional athlete and all those things that kind of drizzle down into your kids. And I see my kids working super hard, taking care of their kids, traveling when they need to, doing what they have to do to get the job done. And it makes my heart warm because we did a good job with our kids, and the kids are doing a good job with my grandkids. You can tell by their behavior when they come over. Are they all doing perfect? No, they're not all doing perfect, and neither was I. And kind of get back to that faith thing and that religious thing. Listen, I don't know. There's no perfect Catholic. There's no perfect Muslim. There's no perfect Jewish person. There's nobody's perfect. Kind of why the whole religion thing exists, right? We have to have something to redeem us, to get us getting back on track and thinking about the right things. And we do this with our kids. If our kids do something that, like my granddaughter didn't turn in a couple assignments a few weeks back, we sit down, we talk through, we tell her how important it is. We help her get organized so she can see that those things are due. And then she does it, and it's redemption, right? It's us going, see, this is what we wanted. This is what we're trying to teach you. This is gonna manifest itself in your life when you work and do whatever you're gonna end up doing. This is how important these things are. And as basic as it seems, we have a high level of kids that aren't hard workers now. They're not, I worked with some of them at this large retailer, and there's just, you can just tell that they were never really pushed at all. And you can push your kids too hard, but they kind of never even had the foundation to be a hard worker. So, and I could tell, you can almost tell the way they walk, um, how excited they're going to be about going to that next level, or just trying to get the job done. When you're at an entry level position like that, I hope you don't think you're going to be in there forever. Now, some of the people that were there were doing it a lot longer than I thought anybody would do that job, but it's whatever their circumstances are. It's not my business. Just like when we talk about faith, it's not my business if you have faith or you have religion or you have whatever. It's just not. All I'm trying to do is give you information from a father's point of view, what I observed, and if you can take it with a grain of salt, you can do whatever you want with the information. Now, I'm going to have some new guests coming on that I hope are going to be really great for you guys. So, like I said, I really appreciate you listening. I'm going to wrap it up because there's not much more I can tell you. We've kind of covered culture in some other podcasts, and it kind of all ties together. And I know it's not a sexy statement, like it's not a sexy topic, but it's very day to day stuff that you need to be doing, and you need to be conscious about doing it. If you say you're going to do something, this is something. I'll tell you a quick story. My dad drank a lot, and at times he would drink and tell me he was going to do something, buy me something, or whatever the thing was going to be, or maybe we were going to go somewhere. And I can remember one time I helped my dad do a task for a company, and he got paid for doing the task. And he had promised me a telescope, that he was going to buy me a telescope, and it was like $10 back then. This is in the dark ages. And I asked him about it, and he said he wasn't going to get it for me. My mom overheard him. She said, "No, Gary, that's my dad's name. You're going to get him that telescope. I heard you tell him you're getting him that telescope." And lo and behold, took me down there. Now, my kids had a funny thing they would do with me. They would ask me questions if we were having some spirits, and they would ask me questions, and I'd say, "Oh, heck yeah, we can do that," or "Yeah, I'll buy you that." And my wife would remind me, you told so and so you were going to do this, and I'm like, "Whoops, well, I guess I'm doing it, because if I said it, we're going to do it." And that's really important, whether you've had spirits or not. If you tell your kids you're going to do something, you need to do it, and it's going to teach them to follow through with what they say too. We talked about that during New Year's resolutions. If you say you're going to do it, do it. If you say you're going to go to the gym, everything is one day at a time. Just do it. Your problem, I shouldn't say your problem. A lot of people's problem is they have these big, huge goals that they want to accomplish in a time frame that's impossible to accomplish it in. And then they give up because they can't see that they're going to accomplish it. That's why I tell you to do these little tiny baby steps, right? Every day when you come home, maybe think of a new topic you can talk to your kids about after dinner. We spent more time at the kitchen table after we ate, just talking about our days and things like that. And that created a really good culture too, because it was this culture about communication. And they could pretty much talk about anything they wanted to. And they opened up a lot. I'm sure there's stuff I haven't heard that my kids did, or, were thinking, but I think they opened up a lot. So anyway, this is the Ed Franklin No Limits podcast. This is Raising 10, episode 11. Many more episodes to come. Please keep listening. Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Super easy to do. When you're there, if you want to listen to any of my Raising 8 or Raising 10 podcasts, if you just click on my playlist, they're all listed there and you can check them out, or you can go to my shorts and look at those, or keep watching my clips on Facebook because there's everywhere you can listen to them. I'm on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart. I'm on all kinds of these ones you can listen to if you want. But listen, I appreciate you listening. A little bit shorter podcasts are getting shorter as we go because that seems to be the trend. But you can always get a hold of me at edfranklin.nolimits.com. Excuse me, edfranklin.nolimits@gmail.com. Or you can go to my website, which is edfranklinnolimits, all one word.com, www.edfranklinnolimits.com. That'll take you to my website. And you can check out some things I have going on there. I appreciate you listening. Happy New Year again. It's cold right now. I'm kind of cold right now, and it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So keep listening. I appreciate you guys, and we will talk to all of you soon.